Welcome back. The Fitchville Pond Dam, that is considered at critical risk of failure, is located in Connecticut's 2nd Congressional District, which is represented by U.S. Congressman Joe Courtney. Representative Courtney joins us this morning. I know we want to talk about other things, Congressman, but let's start with this dam. We were just talking to an expert on dams across the country, and I described what happened as far as a response in Connecticut. And he said it sounds like everything went smooth and people here should be happy that it did. You were out there at the site. What can you tell us about what's happening now?
So, I mean, that river, the Yantic River, which is nicknamed sometimes the Frantic Yantic, really is prone to, high water rise and flooding in the past. And your guest was right. I mean, we've got amazing first responders and people who are really experienced in terms of dealing with these events. Having said that, the fact that there's already now, evidence that the dam is, really needs to be strengthened is something that we really have got to focus on. The president, to his credit, within really about 48 hours of the storm, made a very quick disaster declaration. And at this point, the state of Connecticut Emergency Management Department is putting together a package that will go to FEMA. It'll take a little while to see if what's approved and what's paid for, but in the immediate future, that's hopefully the best response we'll get from the federal government. And I would think that's something that goes right to the heart of keeping property and lives safe is going to be at the top of the list.
Well, I told our guest, I looked back at the records. 1982 was the last massive dam failure in Connecticut. It was in Deep River, and that was a $50 million loss way back in 1982. No loss of life, thankfully. Just quickly on this topic, we've talked to you a lot about the infrastructure bill. Is there maybe another look that needs to happen in your district and across Connecticut at 4,000 dams in Connecticut? Maybe there needs to be some preventative work as well?
Absolutely. I mean, it's the scope of the infrastructure bill was very wide. It was not just roads and bridges and rail. It was a lot more expansive in terms of different types of infrastructure, and certainly dams qualify for that. Again, how that sort of gets navigated through the process is something that certainly this event, I think, is really going to get people going to the rule books in terms of trying to see whether or not, again, that's an opportunity. But FEMA actually does intervene in terms of actual damage caused by natural disasters. And again, I think, the Department of Emergency Management Services is going to be really focused in terms of using that certainly as Plan A.
Let's talk about this bill that you were talking about on Capitol Hill over this past week. A woman named Joyce Grayson lost her life, was murdered last fall, and that has led to a bill for you. Tell us about this bill and what it hopes to accomplish.
Sure. So this bill actually has been around for a while because the rising incidence of injuries that's happening in the healthcare sector. And again, this is, assaultive behavior, violence, violent acts that's being perpetrated on nurses, doctors, EMT professionals, technicians in healthcare settings. It's off the charts. We had a GAO study that found that working in the healthcare sector, you're 5 times more likely to be the victim of violence than any other sector in the U.S. economy. So what our bill would do is basically adopt what have been voluntary guidelines that OSHA has put out for ways to reduce risk for healthcare workers in terms of identifying, patients that are high risk in terms of acting out. And there's ways to do that. And that should have happened in this incident in Willimantic last October for someone who was on a sex offender registry to have a home health nurse walk in alone. Really, given the history of this individual, is, unfortunately an example of why we need to get stronger protections out there for workforce. So it would train people up, again, in terms of how to identify high-risk patients, how to manage violence, if possible, getting, panic buttons, alerts, and in some cases where you're dealing with high-risk individuals, really high-risk individuals, that you just have more security. You don't go in alone to deal with individuals, which sadly, it's just a trend that you talk to anybody in healthcare will tell you is happening, and it's hurting the ability to recruit and retain workers. So it's something we all have a stake in.
Just about 30 seconds left, Congressman, but on this, I know you talked about it being up in 2019, 2021. It passed the House with some Republican votes. So do you think maybe a story like Joyce Grayson's is enough to push it over the top and get it full approval?
Absolutely. And again, the coalition of support from people from all walks of healthcare, I think, is also going to be a really strong push. We have 151 co-sponsors in the House, and it is bipartisan. So this is hopefully one that even in this polarized environment, we can find a pathway.
All right, Congressman Joe Courtney, thank you for being with us. We appreciate you being here on CT24.
Great.